The Fenian Raids by Carter Craik. My chosen artifact is a uniform once worn by a Fenian Brotherhood soldier. These uniforms were worn by most of the Fenian soldiers. It is predominantly green with gold edgings and 6 brass buttons. Each brass buttons have IRA inscribed on them, which stands for Irish Republican Army. The button is outlined by shamrocks. This is believed to be the only surviving uniform of any of the Fenian invasions. Who were the Fenians and what was their goal? The Fenians were a radical group that were present at the time of 1866 to 1871. The Fenians were comprised of mostly Irish Americans that had immigrated from Ireland to escape the potato famine. The leaders of the Fenian uprisings were James Stephens and John O'Mahony. James Stephens and John O'Mahony founded the Fenian Brotherhood in the United States. The Fenians carried out several raids on British-ruled colony in Canada from the American border in search for Irish independence from British rule. The Fenians could not attack England or British directly, mostly because everybody would be decimated by the much larger and more powerful country. So the Fenians wanted to basically take Canada hostage and trade for the independence of Ireland granted by England. The reason why the Irish wanted to separate from England is because people were dying from the potato famine, and most people were living in poverty. No real help was seen from England, as it was believed by Irish to be a genocide, so the Irish thought that separation from the British was the only chance for Ireland's future. How did the Fenian Raids lead to the Confederation of Canada? Canada may not have been the independent nation we know today if not for the Fenian Raids. At the time of the Fenian Raids, discussions of confederation in Canada were already present, but most of the eastern colonies located in Nova Scotia, PEI, New Brunswick, Newfoundland and Labrador were against confederation and saw no real reason to become independent from British rule. But the Fenian Raids made these colonies feel threatened, and it pulled the colonies together and strengthened further support for Canadian Confederation. The poor execution and planning of the Fenian Raids. Although many endeavors to capture British colonies were attempted, none were successful. This is mostly because of poor planning and poor leadership. At the time of the Fenian Raids, and even before the raids, the British had spies inside of the Fenian Brotherhood who released information that prevented the Fenians from invading without warning. Instead of the planned surprise attacks on British colonies, Fenians were often counterattacked because the enemies were waiting for them. For instance, a raid occurred in 1870 at Essel's Hill, when 400 Fenians under the command of General John O'Neill were put down by a much smaller group of Canadian Home Guard and militiamen. They were waiting there to meet them. Only 2 Fenians were killed and 9 were injured. No Canadians were hurt or killed. But O'Neill's words to his troops were these: "Men of Ireland, I am ashamed of you.